please join me in welcoming to National Model United Nations our keynote speaker, Mara Kronenfeld.
Thank you, Michael. Oh, wow, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. And I am truly amazed to see all of you here today. This is a beautiful group of people. And I'm about to talk about a very difficult topic, as Michael alluded to. But I want to tell you that all of you here in this room today, and I've seen a lot of you in the elevators speaking different languages, all of you here at the Model UN gives me and the world hope. So first, I want everybody to give a round of applause for all of you being here today. It has now been 35 days since humanitarian aid into Gaza has been blocked. This is the longest blockade of emergency goods into Gaza since the start of the brutal assault. Food, clean water, shelter, and medical care have become increasingly scarce, and the price of basic supplies has skyrocketed. As of today, literally today, stockpiles are nearly wiped out, bakeries have shut down, hospitals are running out of medicine, and the fuel needed for generators to keep machinery going. This inhumane and deadly blockage of humanitarian aid has been devastating to Gaza, to Palestinians in Gaza, on top of 17 months of brutal siege. All of you here today, I'm sure, understand the critical need for life-saving humanitarian support in Gaza. In fact, Palestinians in Gaza need unhindered access to a level of humanitarian assistance unprecedented in modern history. And at the very same time, humanitarian aid is under attack like no other time in history. I am Mara Kronenfeld, Executive Director of UNRWA USA, an independent US-based nonprofit providing critical humanitarian assistance to Palestine refugees. And this provision of critical life-saving humanitarian provisions is the mission of UNRWA, the UN agency, for the last 75 years, and that of UNRWA USA since we were founded in 2006. You might have also heard about UNRWA, yes, in the news, because Israel has made numerous unfounded accusations against the agency as part of a coordinated propaganda campaign. One accusation is that 19 members of UNRWA's 30,000 employees may or may not have taken part in the heinous events of October 7th in Israel. In the case of 9 of these employees, which is 0.03% of the entire workforce of UNRWA, where Israel had presented evidence that, if authenticated and corroborated, could indicate that these said staff were guilty, UNRWA fired the individuals. UNRWA's Commissioner General, Philippe Lazzarini, has stated emphatically that the engagement of UNRWA employees in such activities would in fact be an appalling betrayal of Palestine refugees and of the United Nations. I have had the privilege of working at UNRWA USA alongside a small group of amazing colleagues, including Americans. There are 6 Palestinian Americans, along with 3 who have family in Gaza. And I happen to come to this work from a very specific background. My grandfather escaped Nazi Germany in 1934, and he fled to the United States. His sister and her family were all killed in the Holocaust. My grandfather arrived in this country and he said, "Never again. Never again shall a group of people be brutalized for who they are, where they were born, or what faith they happen to hold dear." I do the work I do today because of the legacy of my grandfather and his message that not just one religion or group needs to be protected, but all. Thank you. I also happened to marry a wonderful Moroccan gentleman. Any Moroccans in the house? 1, 2, 3 Moroccans. Marhaba, labes. Our kids are half Muslim and half Jewish. And I want to tell everyone here today, and I want to tell everyone in our government, in fact, their Muslim blood is no different, no better than their Jewish blood. And their Jewish blood is no different, no better than their Muslim blood. I'll be speaking for the next 15 minutes or so and wanted to share with you a little bit of an outline of what I'm going to say. First, a little bit of context, very condensed history. I promise condensed because I know I'm dealing with a very knowledgeable crowd here. Of the last 75 years or so, which brings us to this moment, I'm going to describe the current catastrophic state of the situation in Gaza. And I want everyone in this room to understand that even in the middle of what even experts in Israel, are calling a genocide, thousands of UNRWA staff are risking their own lives right now to help those under siege in Gaza. And lastly, recognizing that we are having this discussion in the context of a highly politicized moment with factions and different viewpoints, I want all of us in the room to understand that there is a dark politicization of humanitarian aid and of the United Nations that is taking place in the US and around parts of the world right now. And I want everyone to kind of understand at a palpable level the pressure that UNRWA's life-saving humanitarian aid is under. That said, my overall message to you today is simple. The situation in Gaza is catastrophic and it's overwhelming. It might be easy for even the most caring and concerned among us to tune out the news for our own emotional survival, or because we feel there is nothing meaningful we can do. But there is. The point of this talk is to leave you with 3 meaningful actions to take. Everybody in here continue to demand a ceasefire. Whatever country you are from, wherever you live, but particularly if you are in the United States, where our government, our elected officials have a certain leverage, we must continue to demand a ceasefire. Also, for Americans, demand the restoration of US funding for UNRWA. There are bills, companion bills in the Senate and the House of Representatives right now. Call your elected officials and tell them to support the UNRWA Funding Emergency Restoration Acts. Finally, to each of you in this room, we ask that you continue to absorb the news around you with empathy and, most important of all, critical thinking. Make sure you're getting your news from multiple sources. This is more and more important in our media landscape. And make sure to include among these independent news organizations. Now I'll turn to some context about the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, or UNRWA. UN obligations to Palestine began with the partition of Palestine under UN Resolution 181 in 1947, which of course called for the end of the British Mandate and the recommendation of the partition of Palestine into separate Arab and Jewish states. The Jewish Agency accepted, while the radicalized Irgun and Stern groups on the Jewish side and the Arab states rejected. On May 14, 1948, the British officially ended the mandate, and it was on the day after, May 15th, that the Jewish Agency proclaimed the establishment of the State of Israel, resulting in the first Arab-Israeli War and the forced displacement of some 760,000 Palestinian refugees. During the war, the UN resolution 194 then created the United Nations Conciliation Commission for Palestine. In December 1948, tasked with forging a political solution, that would immediately realize the right of return of these Palestinian refugees. However, unable to mediate the conflict effectively, the UNCCP was quickly overshadowed by UNRWA as the focus turned to dealing with the refugees and their host countries until a political solution was achieved. UNRWA then, as all of you know, was established by United Nations General Assembly Resolution 302 on December 8, 1949, with a humanitarian and development mandate to provide assistance and protection to Palestine refugees pending a just and lasting solution to their plight. In practice, over the last 76 years, this has meant serving the essential food, health, housing, education, and protection needs of Palestinian refugees, a population that has grown from that 760,000 to some 5.6 million registered Palestinian refugees within UNRWA's 5 field sites of operation, which include Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and of course, Gaza. All of us have seen the news. We know the unbearable horror that millions of civilians in Gaza are facing as we speak. I don't need to tell this room that Gaza is decimated. Over 2/3 of all buildings are destroyed. Almost 90% of all schools have been destroyed. All 11 universities have been blown up. Hospitals, places of worship, cemeteries have been targeted and destroyed, all violations of international law. And we have reached the gruesome benchmark of over 50,000 killed. And of course, The Lancet in their second report said that they're estimating actually 60,000 in the first 6 months of 2024 alone. So the actual death toll is likely much, much higher, unfortunately. I don't need to tell you that Gaza's healthcare system is struggling to cope with tens of thousands of casualties. A severe drop in medical supplies, a lack of equipment, blood units, including, and personnel. The entire health system in Gaza has been under attack since the war began. Doctors recount never-ending incidents of patients they could have saved if medical supplies had been available. Many bodies remain under the rubble of destroyed structures, and doctors have reported many injured people have died in front of their eyes because they didn't have the tools or the medicine to treat them. I don't have to tell you that children and women are bearing the brunt of this brutal war. There were some 50,000 pregnant women in Gaza when this conflict began. Imagine them going for months without shelter, without showers, waiting in lines of 500 to use the restroom, giving birth in absolutely unsanitary conditions. I don't need to tell this room. More than 2 million people are trapped in a living hell, which has become, over the last couple of weeks, a cage. 64% of Gaza's territory falls under either displacement orders or no-go zones that the Israeli authorities require no Gazans be located within them. Not only is water not allowed in, but more than 125 water wells are inaccessible for operation, maintenance, repairs, or rehabilitation. Palestinians in Gaza are being treated like pinballs with constant military orders, playing with their fate and their lives. And I don't need to tell you that acute food insecurity is claiming the lives of multitudes of children. Over 15,000 children have been killed. At least 17,000 children are now orphaned. And Gaza tragically holds the largest cohort of child amputees in history. That is why good citizens around the world, like all of you, must continue to advocate for a ceasefire. We must also continue to support and advocate for the helpers, the humanitarian workers risking their life and limb every day to keep their fellow citizens alive and safe. However, even without a ceasefire, even when the borders are closed, there is aid that is being rendered, and this aid must be supported. While many around the world see the horror of what is happening, What many do not see in the headlines is the help being given by UNRWA and other UN agencies and numerous smaller aid groups. You can only imagine, given the catastrophic conditions, how hard it has been to deliver aid under the most brutal and total of sieges. But here is what UNRWA, and this amounts to some 10,000 staff, what UNRWA has done just in Gaza. UNRWA is putting food in the hands of desperate families. During the period of the ceasefire and up until the border was closed, UNRWA was able to bring in 2,100 trucks, along with thousands of other trucks that were brought in by other UN agencies and other humanitarian agencies. UNRWA was able to feed 2 million people during that time. That's almost the whole population. UNRWA is treating the wounded. UNRWA has treated 7 million Palestinians since the siege began, and remains and continues to treat some 12,000 up to this day, 12,000 a day. UNRWA has supported the delivery of polio vaccines to 600,000 youth, preventing the reemergence of polio. UNRWA has provided trauma relief to 725,000 people, almost half of whom are children. And UNRWA is working tirelessly to prevent a lost generation of children who are forced to miss out on their educations. Even with all the good that UNRWA is doing, and maybe even because of it, UNRWA is facing virulent and extremely dangerous attacks, both physically and in rhetoric and politically. Over 285 UNRWA staff members have been killed in this war on Gaza, the highest death toll in UN's history. Gaza-based staff have been detained by Israeli security forces, and they've reported maltreatment and even torture. The Israeli Knesset passed 2 laws to outlaw UNRWA. This has not stopped UNRWA from doing its work. Despite what you may have heard, UNRWA is still on the ground in Gaza, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. And an executive order by this current US administration has blocked future US funding to UNRWA. So what are the reasons for these attacks? In reality, UNRWA represents an uncomfortable truth that its detractors don't want to accept. UNRWA is targeted because of its role in keeping Palestinians alive, because of its role in safeguarding the rights of Palestine refugees, and because it embodies the international community's commitment to a just and lasting political solution. As the executive director of UNRWA USA, I know how diligently UNRWA takes the responsibility of its neutrality and of its humanitarian mission. The independent Colonna report, which was led by former French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna, commissioned earlier in 2024, found that UNRWA's neutrality practices are some of the most robust of any United Nations agency. And this summer, 118 UN member countries, including the US, came together to express their shared commitment to UNRWA, declaring UNRWA the backbone of all humanitarian response in Gaza, and expressing appreciation of UNRWA's dedication to humanitarian principles, including the principle of neutrality. In closing, we live in a time when humanitarian aid itself is under attack. This is where UNRWA and UNRWA USA need your support. You can tell your friends and loved ones the real work of our missions and the support we need in the face of dark and cynical attacks on the work of humanitarian actors. We can transform this dark and ugly politicization of crucial life-saving work, and you all can help us. And those Americans in the room, remember to write your elected representatives, call for a ceasefire, and call for the restoration of funding for UNRWA. Finally, some brief personal reflections. The war on Gaza is overwhelming. The videos that come across our phones and our computer screens and our televisions are unbearable. Like the people we saw flying in the air, reminiscent of 9/11 during the most recent bombings in Gaza. Like the cries we heard under the flames when UNRWA's Jabalia Health Center was bombed just a couple days ago. like the 15 Red Crescent workers and other humanitarians who were killed just a couple of days ago in the line of duty of trying to save lives. Of course, the trauma we're feeling is nothing like those are feeling on the ground. However, I tell myself and all my beloved American friends and all friends from around the world, from every ethnic and religious and political background, we have to stop and let ourselves see these videos from time to time. We can't live if we see them every day, but we have to stop and see these videos and feel them. We have to let ourselves be human and be affected. When you're human, you feel pain. And when you feel pain, you act. You take action. Thank God for those brave souls who took action and protected Jews during the Holocaust. Thank God for those who took in my grandfather's niece to try to protect her before she was sent to die in the gas chambers. Thank God to the US that took in my grandfather. Thank you to all of you who choose to speak out for Palestinian humanity like the humanity of any other people on earth. History will not forget you. Thank you. I want to take a selfie. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. And last thing is, thank all of you, the future leaders in this world, for giving me and all of us hope. It is truly energizing and invigorating to be here with you all today. I can't thank you enough for what you've done for my mood. Thank you.